Well, hello to my Sunday school friends. It is so good to see you. I hope that you're well. I hope that school is going well, and I hope that you and your family are healthy. So, we're continuing to go through the stories of the Old Testament to see how God built his people into a people who would give the world the Messiah, Jesus. We heard last time about a guy named Abimelech who wanted to be king, even though God did not want Israel to have a king, even though it was outside of God's plan and God's will, made himself king, and for 3 bloody years he ruled before he finally lost everything, even his life. And then we remembered that after him, there were a couple of judges who ruled Israel, who told Israel about God's law and what to do and how to keep God's law, and that for 45 years, there was peace. For 45 years, God blessed his people. But you know what's going to happen. Israel forgot again. And they stopped going to Shiloh. They stopped worshiping God. They stopped giving the gifts that they were supposed to give. They stopped keeping the commandments they were supposed to keep. And it got bad. It got worse and worse and worse. Somewhere in here, there was a little boy born, and his brothers turned against him. His brothers didn't like him. The reasons aren't so very important, but when he was quite a young man, the brothers drove him away from their house. His name was Jephthah, and he wound up growing up in a land called Tob. And he became a very strong man, a very great man. People told stories about all of his exploits, and even his brothers heard about them. But meanwhile, things were going bad in Israel. They had just forgotten everything that they were supposed to do. And so, as always happens, God let some of their neighbors attack them and take them over. A group called the Ammonites attacked them from the east, and a group called the Philistines attacked them from the west. They took over most of the country. They ran everything. They had people pay huge taxes, and the people cried out to God, "Please help us. Please help us." For 18 years they cried out to God under the rule of these enemies. And God said to them, "No. You have new gods. See if your new gods will help you." Oh, the people were so sorry. They knew that they deserved that from God. And they knew that they'd been bad. So they tore down their idols, and they started doing the right thing again, and they started going back to Shiloh. They started trying to keep God's law, to remember it, to keep it, to live it, and God felt sorry for them. And he saw that they were beginning to gather soldiers to try to throw off the Ammonites, but they didn't have a captain. And then God helped them remember Jephthah, and helped them hear again about all of his power and all of the deeds that he was doing. And the people went to Jephthah and they said, "Will you be our captain? Will you be our leader?" And Jephthah said, "I'm not even part of your country anymore. My brothers drove me out of the country, and none of you did anything to help me." And they said, "Please be our leader. If you're our leader, then we'll let you be the leader of all Israel. Let you be our judge, please." Now, there's some part here that we're just going to skip, all right? Because it's not, this part, next part of the story isn't for children. When you're an adult, it's something that we should talk about, and it's something that we should take very, very seriously. But the part of the story that you can know, that you should know, is Jephthah agreed to lead Israel. He went, and the Ammonites, were making more demands. "Turn over this whole part of your country." And Jephthah said, "Absolutely not. It wasn't even yours in the first place. It belonged to the Amorites, not the Ammonites. And we're not going to give it to you. God gave it to us when we got out of Egypt. And if you want to fight about it, then we'll fight about it." So the Ammonites attacked, and Israel defended, and God helped the Israelites drive off the Ammonites, helped them have their country again. And Israel kept its promises to Jephthah, made him the judge over all Israel, and he was judge over Israel for 6 years. And in 6 years he died, and the people buried him, and they mourned his passing. So that's the story for today. Again, the part that I jumped over, it's not for children. Don't go look it up, and don't wonder about it. We'll get there when you're older. It's important for older people to think about. But just Be aware of this pattern that we see over and over and over about how people didn't trust and they fell away, and then disaster struck, and then they remembered God, and God remembers God promises, and God is always willing to help us. God helps Israel, and God helps us. You take care. Do your best to remember what God would have you do. Do your best to follow Jesus, and remember that Jesus chose you. Jesus loves you, and Jesus will never let you go. I'll see you next week. Next week we start talking about Samson. Woo-hoo. Bye.